For us, the way we approach content is very much search first. So everything we think about when it comes to content marketing, we're just trying to understand, okay, how can we rank for this on Google? And are we going to be getting the right kinds of people onto these articles who could then find Supermetrics useful?
On today's episode of Rise, Grind, Repeat, we talked to Edward from Supermetrics. Talk about how they're using data to fuel their content marketing strategy. Let's dive right in. Edward, thank you so much for joining on another episode of Rise, Grind, Repeat. I am pumped for this one. As I mentioned, kind of when we were connecting beforehand, been using Supermetrics for 3+ years. We're very data and analytics focused, and I still reminisce sometimes of taking 12, 13 hours to put all these Excel sheets together. Formulas are working, but what you guys have come out with has been amazing in terms of efficiency and pulling numbers. But before we kind of nerd out too much on the data and analytics side, I'd love just to kind of let you introduce yourself. What's kind of your background and what do you do at Supermetrics?
My background is that I'm, as you can tell by the accent, originally from the UK, so a little bit far from the southwest of the States, Arizona and so forth. But originally from the UK, and I've lived in Finland for about 15 years. And so I think I'm a little more Finnish than I am British these days. But my career pretty much started off in an agency after graduating from university. And that was great because I got to work in a very small agency, like 10, 15 people. I think you know how it is. In an agency. You do a lot of different stuff. You have your job title, but you wear many different hats. You do a lot of different things. So I was working with clients on projects, on copywriting, project management, on key account management further down the line, was recruiting, building a team, and also doing our own marketing. And that's what I really fell in love with. And I knew from there I wanted to go really full on marketing and find an in-house role. And worked in a couple of different tech companies here in Helsinki, where I'm living. And from there, I went to a B2B SaaS growth marketing agency. And that was really where I got my first introductions to working with SaaS companies in particular. So that was a Finnish agency that was then going international, working with more companies around Europe. And from there, I joined Supermetrics. So after like 2-3 years at another agency, I made the leap in-house to an in-house SaaS team. I joined Supermetrics a couple of years ago, and it's just been phenomenal. The growth in the company. When I joined, there was about 30 people in the company, and we were all sat in the same room, literally the whole company. And now we have 3 offices. We have Helsinki, we have Vilnius, and we have an office in Atlanta. And there's 150 people. We've 4x'd ARR in 2 years. It's just been phenomenal. Really fun. The marketing team has grown as well, quite substantially in that time. But then the sales team, that's where we've seen like a huge growth. So when I joined, there were just 3 people in the sales team, and now there are about 30 people in the sales team. So we've really been expanding there, which has obviously changed how we do our work, because Supermetrics was a pure self-serve SaaS business. Initially, we got to 5 million in annual recurring revenue without a single salesperson. And obviously now we have way more in sales than marketing. So that's changed the dynamic. So so a lot of different things, but really rooted in marketing, in B2B and in SaaS.
No, I love it. Love the background. And before we kind of get into marrying, I think a big disconnect is, the sales and marketing teams. There's a big disconnect typically in most organizations. So love to kind of hear some of your insights there on how you kind of tie those two together. But just out of curiosity, what was it like to go from agency life to working, within a brand? I think the day-to-day is completely different from agency, fires, trying to put them out to, not as much bureaucracy, but if you go in-house, there might be a little more time to getting things approved. And it's just a different day-to-day than working in traditional agency, and knowing that you did work at a smaller agency where you're wearing even more hats than your traditional 50, 100 person agency. What was that transition like, going from the agency to in-house?
Yeah, it's a lot of fun to work on both sides of the table because you really get to understand things from different perspectives. I think when you're working in an agency, for sure, it can be quite chaotic. But I think the great thing is that you learn a huge amount in such a short space of time, normally because you're working with multiple clients at the same time. So I think it depends on the agency and obviously the size of the client as well, that if you have like one or two really big clients, you could spend all your time working with those companies, or it's not uncommon you might have more. So you have a lot of different businesses you work with. You meet some fantastic people who really push you and work with you to help get results, obviously. And you have lots of problems to solve. So in, say, I think 1 year in agency, you can learn so much more than, say, 1 year in-house if you're working with lots of different clients. But then, of course, the challenge with that is that there's only so much you can do, and maybe you're only focusing on a certain area of the business where your agency specializes in, and then you kind of see issues. But when you're in an agency, your influence is limited. So when you go in-house, you have a lot more ability to go and impact things across the whole organization. But of course, the flip side is that you sort of have that one business. In a way, you have one client, so to speak. So obviously, there's so much to do and there's a lot of different things going on, but the variety is maybe lacking compared to an agency life. So I think there's a lot of obviously pros and cons on both sides. But I think to have that experience, particularly for a marketer, I think if you work in marketing, I would highly recommend you to go and work in an agency at some point. It's going to seriously level up your skill set. And so, yeah, I think definitely a lot of good things to like about working on both sides of the table, for sure.
Yeah, no, it's definitely agree with you. Just many hats, having the opportunity to learn so many different verticals of business, which then are different problems and industries. And really, I mean, it gets you problem solving very quickly. Been in the agency world started 9 years ago or so. And over the 9 years, it's just looking back amazing between learning Google Analytics, Facebook ads, media buying, just SEO, just you learn quite a bit over that course of time, which ultimately is why I wanted to start this, is tend to build up that knowledge bank, and then how can we use it ourselves. But did have the opportunity to work in-house, basically transition between agency and opening my own thing. And so it is a lot different in terms of just the speed of pace and what gets focused on. And to your point, it is a lot different. And I think there are pros and cons to each side, but it definitely a different taste of life, between the two different industries.
Yeah, I think the point you made there about speed and pace, that's another important one. When you work in an agency, you're paid for results and you don't really have time to waste or to spend like huge amounts of time on research and so forth. Of course, that's important, but you need to get results quite quickly. Mm-hmm. So speed is at the essence of what you do. And that means like having really good processes and having good systems in place that enable you to deliver results and get things going quickly, which I think if you then make the move in-house and you bring that agency mindset, you can almost work like an internal consultant at first to figure out, okay, what's the challenge? What's going on? Where should I hit first? And then you kind of jump in with speed. So yeah, I think that's another big benefit of working in an agency, that you typically work at a much faster pace than if you've just been an in-house marketer your whole career as well. So yeah, for sure. I think that's a super, super good point as well.
Yep. And knowing that you've kind of played both on the marketing side, you're in sales now, started from the ground. I mean, with Supermetrics, I'd love to kind of hear what kinds of things are you doing? I was impressed with your LinkedIn, content marketing, quantifying results. I mean, there's a lot that is on your resume, which I think a lot of people are trying to figure out. So would love, without giving the secret sauce away, what are some of the things that you guys have done that has helped really drive sales and made you guys 4x in the last two years?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things is just to figure out where your customers come from. So you're not just shooting in the dark or throwing spaghetti against the wall, but just really think there's so much you can do in marketing. There's so many channels and so many tactics and so many things that you can do that if you're not careful, you'll just do 100 things averagely. And rather than doing, say, 3, 4, 5 things really, really well. So for us, what we kind of figured out were what are the channels that we really want to go for. And Supermetrics, the nature of the product is that we integrate with lots of marketing platforms on one side, and you can bring data from all those different platforms into spreadsheets, into dashboarding tools like Data Studio, and so forth. So we integrate with a lot of marketing platforms like Google Analytics, Facebook, LinkedIn, and so forth. And then we also integrate on the destination side with things like Google Sheets, Microsoft Excel, Google Data Studio, BigQuery, and so forth. So for us, marketplaces are a huge like part of our marketing strategy, in that we can tap into all those different networks. So that is a big thing that we play on. And then we also think about the product itself. So how can we leverage the product to actually grow? This is what is often referred to as product-led growth. And then in addition, just figuring out that, of course, paid is a great channel. If you can get it working, it's very easy to measure. And you can see what is and isn't working. And then there's a lot you can feed into other marketing channels from your paid results as well, like what messaging works well. It's a great way to test things quickly. And then also, I'm a big believer in content and inbound, having worked at an inbound agency in the past as well. But also when I was in-house in a previous company before Supermetrics, we went big on inbound just as HubSpot was really starting to gather momentum, and we saw the results. And I think the great thing about inbound is that it's not so much the methodology or the tactics, but I think it's more the philosophy that you're just there to help. So it's really about educating your audience. And I think the best marketing is when you help your customers be more successful in whatever it is they do. And I think if you take that into the heart of your marketing strategy, you can't really go wrong. Of course, how you implement that, that's a whole new story. And that's why I think content marketing is fantastic. And I think as well, organic acquisition is just a gold mine. If you can crack it, and if you can find areas to target, it doesn't mean going after these high volume vanity search terms, which might not have too much to do with your product or your service. If you're just going for the traffic numbers, then that's really not what it's about at the end of the day. So trying to find really good quality keywords that what we look for indicate high intent. So we know that if people are searching for this keyword, there's a high likelihood that they would find Supermetrics a really useful solution. So I think intent is something we value a little more over quantity. And then, of course, looking at other things like competition and so forth. So those are some of the things that we try to focus on. And there's a lot of things we've spoken about doing. We've experimented with events, but we haven't really dived into that fully or committed to that fully. We got some good results, but we didn't see enough to kind of go fully in that direction. There's a few other things as well we can do, but we still have a relatively small team, so you need to be quite careful. But one thing we recently launched is our own podcast. We finally felt it was the time to do that. Again, with something we had discussed for some time, but now we felt it was the right time, and we kind of layered that on top of our own content marketing strategy. And I think, as you know, hosting a podcast, that just from one episode, you can actually get a lot from that in terms of repurposing content, distribution, and so forth. So I think that's a sort of short overview to our philosophy and how we think about marketing and the kind of channels and tactics that we look into.
No, I love all of that. It's we have a very similar approach where, just most clients, most brands that we see, all the messaging is buy now, buy today, here's a discount. And it works. It does work in a sense, but if you were to take a step back and really, how can you bring value to your potential consumers, your prospects? That's where you start getting people thinking. And once you can educate them on how better to either use the product or service, how it's going to make their life better, easier, take more off their plate, whatever that position is that your product or tool helps with, I think you can get people to really understand the value of what you bring. And now you're going to create more of a larger lifetime value of a customer, rather than someone goes, okay, I'm going to get $20 off the first month of Supermetrics. Sweet. But I didn't really know how to use the tool. So now I stop after month 1, 2, or 3. Whereas if you're doing more educational on, are you trying to combine Facebook, Google ads? And I know that you guys recently connected to Taboola, based on all these different channels that you guys are running. Wouldn't it be nice to aggregate that all and not have to spend hours? And so it's like, as you educate more and show people really how to use the product or service, it's going to that aha moment's going to happen. And again, you're going to not even have to use any type of discount to get them on. They're probably going to use it longer because now they're educated, which I think is a big issue when it comes to SaaS. Is I think there's a lot of, great ideas, great tools out there. You get someone to sign up, but if there is no onboarding or how to use the tool, you're going to lose people quickly. And once they start seeing that recurring bill come in, you're going to lose them. And that's ultimately not what anyone wants to do. The most expensive customer is a new one rather than retaining them. And so all that being said, do you have any types of examples of the content marketing that you guys are doing? What does that look like? Because I think content marketing is really well known. People understand, I think need to do it. But how do I do it? What do I do? Is it a podcast? Are they blogs? Is it a little bit of everything? Are you able to shed some light on some types of content pieces that you guys have folded into the content marketing?
Yeah, sure. So for us, the way we approach content is very much search first. So everything we think about when it comes to content marketing, we're just trying to understand, okay, how can we rank for this on Google? And are we going to be getting the right kinds of people onto these articles who could then find Supermetrics useful? So we also take this product-led approach into our content marketing as well, so that I think almost all articles or most articles that you'll find on Supermetrics are in some way tied to the product. So an example of what we could be looking for would be, as you said, how can I aggregate Facebook, Taboola, and Google Analytics data? So if someone is searching for that combination, or if they're looking to, say, move Taboola data into a Google Sheet spreadsheet, then those are the things that we're going to be looking at and writing articles on, okay, how you can actually do that. And hey, presto, Supermetrics is actually quite a handy way that will let you move your marketing data and centralize it basically from wherever you want to wherever you want. And that's really at the heart of what we do. So we have quite a few templates that we have produced around common use cases. And then we write supporting articles on how to use the template and in which cases will it be useful. So that's sort of the short summary of our approach to content. And we don't really deviate from that. We of course, might write about some other things. We might create some more brand-driven content about the importance of analytics and so forth. But for the most part, that's what we're looking at. And our content is really measured in terms of new trials. So how many people start a trial on the back of our content? And of course, how many people then go on to convert and become a customer? And I think the point you said there about retention in SaaS is so important, because we can't just splash a 25% discount, buy now, this offer ends tonight. Of course, we could do that, but we need to ensure retention, because it's actually costing the business if someone signs up to Supermetrics, they purchase the product, and then they decide to cancel after a couple of months. So the acquisition is just going to be higher than the amount that we got back. So we really bake that into everything we do from day one in marketing. That we all often say, and I think many marketers say in SaaS, that customer retention starts from marketing and acquiring the right fit customers in the first place, so that you know that they're going to stick with you. And so long as you can keep providing value, that they're going to stay with us. So that's a kind of intro into like how we think about content and what we really look at Supermetrics.
No, I love it. Just the search intent. I started in everything working with Google way back when, and it was all educating small business owners on how to use the Google AdWords at the time platform. But from that, just learning how valuable tying into someone's intent, what it is that they're trying to look for or accomplish. If you can reverse engineer a strategy that speaks to that, that's huge. And I mean, we're kind of taking a similar approach, just one with podcast, video content, based off of how people are searching, and folding video in has been huge. But I think one thing that you mentioned, I mean, going back to working at an agency, it's speed, efficiency, setting up processes and tools. Supermetrics has been huge when it comes to that, just expediting how quickly we can give people real-time data. When it used to be you have to wait 3 weeks into the month before you see last month's numbers. And so that's helped tremendously. But what I would say is, most people, ask, what is the ROI of content marketing? It takes six to 12 months to really pick up steam. It doesn't seem like it's ROI focused, or that it is going to drive an ROI. And after hearing what you've mentioned, how you guys 4x'd in the last 2 years, what would you say to someone that just says they don't have the time or energy, they don't see the value in producing content that isn't just so sales focused?
Yeah. I think that the most fundamental question is, like, why would you produce content, and does it make sense for your business? Do you see content? And I think when we speak about content, we're talking a lot about sort of longer form blog articles or how-to posts or landing pages on websites, pillar pages. Does that actually make sense for your business and your industry? And I think that is where you really need to start, because I've seen the other side where companies have just jumped into blogging and content without any understanding of why they're doing it and how does it tie to their business outcomes. And it was it's maybe not as bad now as it was. I think when blogging came about, like maybe 10 years ago, and then HubSpot were driving everything, that people just sort of jumped on the blog bandwagon. Mm-hmm. And I think when we use the word blog, it's also associated with those old school Web 2.0 kind of diary entries where you share news about like what is happening, even though that's changed somewhat. So it's I think in our case, it's not really about a publication. It's more about being a library. So that's what we think about with our content. So I think you just need to understand why you would do it. Does it make sense? And try to figure out if it's right for you, and if it seems like a good tactic, then go for it. And I think just start small and try to identify, okay, what is the purpose of our content? Are we trying to acquire organic traffic through Google, or is it more about getting people to share bold articles about controversial topics, or taking a stance on a polarizing issue in your industry that you're going to get people talking? Again, those purposes have very, very different approaches to creating that content. So I think the most important question is why are we doing this? Does it make sense? And then if you think it seems like a good idea, then I'd encourage you to try it out, start small, see what results you get. But if you commit to content, then you need to stick with it for quite a while, because like you said, that it's not something you just do and it pays back immediately. It takes a lot of time, effort. But I think there's a lot of good brand benefits as well. If you start creating content around a specific topic relevant to your industry or your field, then you start positioning yourself as a thought leader, as someone who really understands this. So I think even from a brand play, it's there's a lot to like about content.
Yeah, no, I love everything about that. And really, when it comes to producing content and everything, do you kind of lead that, or what is your role in, I guess, how Supermetrics makes what it is they're going to make in the pipeline?
Yeah, so we mainly do most things in-house. It's quite an important channel for us. So we have, I guess if you add me, I'm occasionally writing content, maybe a little less so these days than I used to. We have two full-time content marketers, and then we have myself and another member of the marketing team who are creating content every so often. And that's just because we felt like content is so important to us that we want to try and keep the core of that in-house. But then we also partner and work with some fantastic freelancers who are specialists in specific topics. So Supermetrics has recently ventured into e-commerce. So you can pull e-commerce data from Shopify into wherever it is you want to analyze that data. And so we've found like some fantastic freelancers who really know their stuff around e-commerce and e-commerce analytics, who've helped and created some content for us. We've partnered with some other freelancers as well. And then we also have a lot of people reach out to us about whether we accept guest posts, which we do, but we're a little thorough in terms of who we would work with there. I think like all marketing companies, martech companies, get a lot of people reaching out and asking if they can write on Supermetrics. Some better than others, I have to say. Some pitches are maybe haven't been thought through too much. So that's a clear no, but that's also a great way if you can find some good guest writers. to work with them as well to really add some scale to your content. So those are I think the three main ways in which we produce and scale our content.
No, that's great. I didn't know that you guys accepted that. We're actually working on leveraging your guys' affiliate program quite a bit. I've seen some success there, and it's what we're finding is we're going to start producing content around it, a lot of how-tos and basically how you can just get data in real time without having to wait, going to Google Analytics and all of that. But yeah, if there's anything that we think is good, I'll shoot it your way.
Yeah, definitely. I look forward to it.
But outside of that, I mean, you've been on the ground floor of creating content, getting a team of basically producing the content, really spearheaded quite a bit of that. What's the biggest thing that you've learned, being on ground zero, getting to where you are now, when it comes to just overall just inbound strategy, content marketing, just really how to produce content to drive sales? What's been the biggest thing that I guess you've learned throughout your time at Supermetrics?
Yeah, so I think you kind of need to bridge with your content and inbound. You're basically the bridge between the customer and the sales team. So on the customer side, you need to obviously really, really understand the customer. And like all good marketing, you need to do a lot of research. You need to interview customers. You need to figure out pain points. And you need to understand how they search for solutions and how they find out about solutions. And keyword research is a big part of that when it comes to content. And just understanding the ways and the channels in which people come to you through content. And then you adapt your content strategy for that. So that is sort of on the customer side. And then on the sales side, it's okay. So people come to your site. What happens then? In the old days of inbound, it was about gated ebooks or gated premium content, PDFs, and so forth, which I don't know. There's a big debate about this going on in marketing right now. Is this something like from the past? Is it old school? Does it still work? I think there's a time and a place for it. If you can provide enough value, I think the bar has just become a lot higher, whether it's through original research, whether it's through some really longer form content. If you can justify it, I think it works. And it works better also with certain types of sales cycles. If you have slightly longer sales cycles, more high touch, big sales team involved, then that can be a good conversation starter. But basically figure out what happens after that. So at Supermetrics, really, it's more about getting people to start a trial. So that's what we're looking for people to do. And then once people start the trial, then the trial onboarding flow is going to help people understand a bit more about how to use Supermetrics, about what they should do to get started, and so forth. So it ties in quite nicely, and we can bring in templates, we can bring in how-to tutorials, and so forth. So that's kind of how we think about it. What's changed for us is that we've now layered a podcast on top, which I think is more of a brand-driven content initiative. So it's a step away from our bread and butter marketing strategy and our content strategy, but we really, really, really want to be part of the marketing analytics conversation. I think anyone who is using Supermetrics is going to be interested in marketing analytics, and I think anyone who works in marketing nowadays, whether it's B2B, B2C, e-commerce, you need to have a good understanding of marketing analytics. Even if you don't know how to work with data, you need to understand the importance of data, and you're going to be working with people who will be crunching numbers, whether it's marketers in your own team, or maybe if you have a data and analytics team, if you're a slightly bigger company, you need to understand that you need to have a good foundation in place, and you need to be able to make decisions based on the results you're seeing. So we really want to be part of that marketing analytics discussion. And that's why we started the Marketing Analytics Show, which is really discussing with a lot of different marketers, marketing on basically anything to do with marketing analytics. So there's a lot of different topics we can dig into there. But that's also been a good way to kind of move into other topics. And it's been a great way to expand our network. And there's a lot of ways we can repurpose that content as well. From the podcast, as you know. So that's kind of how we think about content and inbound, and how we move business forward and think about the customer, but also the sales team as well.
Yeah, no, very, very well said. And I love it. And I think, podcast, it's easy for businesses, business owners, whoever it may be, just to kind of see the next shiny object and chase that and almost kind of make no progress on any front, because you're constantly chasing the new thing. Got to figure out how to use it. It might not work. I love going back to the ebook and the downloadable content. I think, what is your opinion on it? I think to your point, there is a time and place to use it. I think it's more used for if people are further down the sales cycle than prospecting and introducing the brand, only because it's, how many times do you fill out your real email, phone number, and it's not your throwaway one that you're probably not even going to see the following emails on that drip campaign, whatever it may be. I think they are useful, but I think in certain applications and instances and how well they know and understand the brand. Have you guys tested some of that? Are you guys folding it in?
Supermetrics, no, we haven't really gated any content. We've spoken about it and we've discussed some ideas, but at this point we haven't kind of bitten the bullet and gone into it. We haven't ruled it out. I think we just need to find something that justifies that, and we need to understand why are we doing it, so that we're not just generating contacts and leads for the sake of showing on a dashboard like, oh, we created or we generated this many new leads through marketing this month. So I agree with you that there's a time and a place for it. I just think the bar is a bit higher, and again, you need to make sure that people who would be really interested in it would be willing to do it, and it's makes sense on both sides, because I think there's so much good content out there that no one wants to give up their contact info for another crappy ebook.
Exactly. It all comes down to the strategy and the content that's behind it. You can't just take someone else's blog post, copy and paste, and now you got an ebook. I think to your point, the bar has been set higher. So it just takes more time, energy, and resources to produce the good content that would give you the real contact information. And I think to your point, the whole goal of all of that is to feed a sales pipeline that's going to turn into paying customers and revenue. So as long as all that checks out, I think it's still a good opportunity. But again, I think there's too many people just not putting enough effort into creating the good content that, I would give my personal information for, knowing that going to be contacted and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And when talking about, you've learned a lot, you guys just rolling out a new podcast. I absolutely love it, because outside of just, it's fun connecting with people like you, it's fun networking, but there is a ton of opportunity to chop up a bunch of 2-3 minute clips from a 30-minute conversation that could fuel some of the content marketing. And if done right, it basically brings down what looks like the cost of doing the podcast, because there's so many different applications it can be used for. But knowing that you just launched it, what are things that you guys are working on in not so much the long term, but the near term future? Some of the big pieces that you're working on in the next 3 to 6 months. Is it trying to test a new channel? Is it putting the gas on the fire when it comes to the podcast? Or what are some things that you guys have going on that you're looking to accomplish in the next 3 to 6 months?
Yeah, so I think I kind of break this down on different levels. So on a company level, we're really driving for growth. So we're pretty ambitious. We're looking around 60-70% year-on-year growth, which for a SaaS company of our size, it gets harder and harder when the baseline is just getting higher. But that's what we're looking at. And then for sure on the marketing level, we are looking to hire and grow the team, find a couple of key recruits. But for sure, I think just keep doing what we're doing. And actually, as you said, throw a bit more fuel on the podcast fire. So when we started the podcast, we agreed a new episode every 2 weeks. That was the goal. But then we improved our processes. We made things more efficient. Like when you start a new podcast, it can take actually a bit of time to get things up and running. But then when you refine the process, it becomes easier, and we were getting like good results, a lot of content. And then I think another thing that we're looking at is implementing a new success measure in marketing. So moving towards what is called a PQL. I know that there's a lot of QLs going around in marketing, MQLs, SQLs, and so forth. But we're looking at the product qualified lead, which is something that's used a little more in SaaS, so that you're not just generating trial users, so people who start a free trial, but then there's actually some qualitative measure that people are not just starting a trial, but they're actually using the product, getting value out of it. And then that's a way that we can make sure that we're providing good quality opportunities for the sales team. We're finding the right people, and that the people who are using Supermetrics are getting value out of it, so that we're not just, again, trying to hit that vanity metric. So that's something we're going to be implementing, coming up with definitions of what a PQL means at Supermetrics, and then obviously getting the internal data. We can measure that and track that and follow that. So those are some of the big things that we're going to be looking at in the next 3 to 6 months, I would say.
No, that's great. Producing more content and looking at how you can slice and dice data a little bit differently to just give you better insights on how to grow even quicker. I think that's everything. It's funny you mentioned that, because it's always trying to figure out different ways, whether it's, you have bounce rate, average session duration, and Google Analytics. How can you kind of form a couple different metrics together to create your own KPI and really testing it? And is there a correlation between that number and sales or growth that's happening? But I think, I love that you guys are, head down trying to figure that out. And then from a personal level, what are some of the big things that you're working on to continue your own personal growth?
Yeah, so I think one of the big things that are happening right now is that I'm actually on paternity leave, as we were chatting about. So that is definitely having a huge impact on my own personal growth. So we have a 1-year-old here at home. My wife, she's just returned to work after her maternity leave. So now I get to spend a bit of time, just the two of us, some good boy time, good bonding before he starts daycare, which has been phenomenal. And also, I think it's a good way to reflect on work as well. You get to step away. A lot of things that I've been having issues with or haven't just had time to think about, you kind of switching off, then all of a sudden it comes to you in the evening when you're watching TV or cooking dinner. So for me, I think that's going to be definitely one of the big things. And then obviously going back to work in a month or so now from this recording. So jumping back and catching up and figuring out what's been happening while I've been away, and jumping onto the PQL bandwagon and figuring out what does that mean, and what do the numbers look like, and then hiring. So that's going to be something that I'll be jumping back into. I'll be spending a lot of time on recruitment when I get back, and then otherwise, I also host a podcast as well, which is actually from my previous company, from the agency I was working at before Supermetrics. We started that 3 years ago, and that is all about B2B SaaS marketing. As the agency is specialized in working with B2B SaaS businesses in the Nordic and European region. So I've been interviewing some fantastic guests from the world of B2B SaaS. I've been kind of keeping that up as well in the evenings. So I have a good pipeline of episodes, which has been a fantastic place to grow. So I think those are some of the things that are for sure going to be keeping me busy in the next 3 to 6 months.
That's awesome. What was the name of that other podcast?
So it's called the Growth Hub Podcast. So if you're interested in B2B SaaS marketing, then I would absolutely love for you to go and check that out and let me know what you think.
Awesome. No, we'll definitely include a link in the show notes and give you a little shout out there. But I mean, this has been great. I really appreciate the time. And as we kind of wrap things up, I guess always try and leave on some form of advice or anything like that. And really, you're big in the data analytics, real-time numbers. I guess for any business or entrepreneur that's out there to try and just get quicker and figure out how they can make better decisions, I guess what's one big piece of advice that you'd have for them as they're trying to figure out how to just get better data quicker and whatnot?
Yeah, so I think best piece of advice I could give here would again just be to figure out what is it you're trying to achieve, why are you trying to achieve that, and what is the best way to measure that. And then once you've figured out a good way of measuring that, it's then much easier to make decisions, move quicker, and come up with the right decision. So I think just having that good foundation in place for data and analytics is going to make your marketing and your business decision making a lot easier.
Awesome. And I would say, anyone that's watching that wants to do that, check out Supermetrics. They'll help you shave off hours in your monthly, what's going on, just launched a campaign, how's it performing? Check out Supermetrics and your life will be changed totally after that.
Yeah, we'll automate all the dirty work so that you'll for sure save a lot of time.
Yep. No, I appreciate the time. This has been great. Would love for you to get back and enjoy your paternity leave. Edward, I really appreciate the time. And looking forward to seeing more content that you guys pump out. Sounds like you guys are going to be doing a lot here in the near term. So I'm excited to see how you can just help more businesses grow by giving them the data that they need.
Yeah, absolutely. Dustin, I just want to thank you again so much for having me. It's been awesome chatting with you on the podcast.
Awesome. Appreciate it.